Number five, economic inequality and wealth gap. Obviously, from 1865 to the present. Technically,
Mm.
from the goddamn 1500s when these crackers pulled up to this bitch to present. But, however, um, so this shit obviously affected us nationwide, still affects us ongoing. The vectors are financial and historical. After slavery was abolished, black Americans were excluded from many economic opportunities, such as land ownership. And to stop right there, while we were excluded from land ownership, poor whites or white peasants, just to call it what it is and was, were given land for free. So these same whites that talk about if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, if you work hard enough, niggas was ironically working more than fucking hard enough while these white people were doing nothing except coming off of a boat to get to this bitch and was being given free land in a lot of these instances because in the beginning days of the colonies, they was trying to just survive and get their motherfucking numbers up because they are in a foreign land outnumbered like a motherfucker. You feel me? So this is why they had to like if we just body the whole little county-sized area of the indigenous people. You get 30 acres of there. You get 30 acres over there. Land for you, land for you, land for you. Now you're gonna have to kill the motherfuckers when they come back to try to kill you, but that's your land now. You feel me?
Right.
And shit like that was going down. So that's the land ownership piece. And then you had another round of what we call the $5 Indians, the white people who, at the time of the 1800s, when they had the Doors Rolls, which was basically like a legislation passed that you could get Indian land in these newly
Mhm.
conquered areas because America been killing so-called Indians since day one, all the way up into the middle of the motherfucking 19th century, like damn near the 1950s, 1960s. So while our grandparents was watching cowboy and Indian movies on TV, the United States government was actually still killing so-called natives at that time. And now that we've seen the cover the material from the last video you and I did, now you know they are still killing Indians. But
Right.
anyway, um,
Anyway, they not. Hopefully, they get that.
exactly.
Y'all got to make sure y'all tap into that last video, um,
Yep,
and then you'll get what we're talking about in this one.
exactly. So we cover land ownership, these whites. Oh, so then the other piece of this land ownership situation, there's a famous rebellion called Bacon's Rebellion, right? There were Irish and black slaves. None of that indentured servant. Well, technically there was everybody was an indentured servant at this point in history. Now this is another thing, like the people that tell the narrative that there wasn't no slavery and all this shit, it was just indentured servitude. It's a yes and no. So in the beginning, there was indentured servitude. Like you would have to, they looked at it almost like prison. You would do like slavery for 7 years or some shit like that. After your 7 years was up, you was free to go. You got some bread, and then usually you was even probably you had that bread and you used that to buy your own land, and now you can move and shake. That's how slavery initially was running in this country in the very, very, very early beginning of this shit, right? And that applied for for our ancestors and for the Irish at the time. Bacon Rebellion kicked off, and the elite whites, which are the WASP, white Anglo Saxon Protestants, they were like, oh no, this is too much right here. This is too close for comfort. You know what I mean? You gotta look at that shit like a prison, hundreds of prisoners, and there's probably only like 20 fucking prison guards. Nigga, ooh, this is dangerous. This is scary right here, from their perspective. That's when the concept of the idea of white, which is really a class, black and white are classes in America.
Mm-hmm.
They came up with that idea, the classification, because the Irish were Caucasian like them. They may not have been, British or German, because a lot of the original motherfuckers that came here that were of a high class, devil that, came over here on some some George Washington Mayflower type shit. They were of British, German, and other, whatever you categorize as the higher level European countries of that type of cloth, right? But the long and short, the Irish, they were slaving side by side with us. And once that rebellion kicked off, they cut the side deal, the elite, the wasps, they cut the side deal with them Irish slaves and said, look, you ain't gonna have to work for free. We're gonna give you this status called white. So when you hear the term psychological wages of whiteness, that's the first one. Because you out here, you still in field with these niggas, but now that and I'm giving you like the mentality that's switched now. Instead of the
Mm-hmm.
Irish being side, because white people that's Irish will tell you, well, sure, we were considered the niggas of Europe, like you were, and you were the niggas here too. Don't ever forget that.
Right.
But
Right.
the moment them devils gave you your white card, they are the first recipient of the fucking white card. Once they got that white card, then they was no longer, you know, in with us, you know what I mean, so to speak. They became the overseers. So that's like you working at Walmart, y'all stocking shelves and shit, and then they give old Jimmy, they make him a supervisor now. So now he ain't kicking it with you no more when the smoke breaks. He think he like important now over you. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty much what the overseer was. He was a former fucking white slave who got the white card upgrade. Like you ain't on the fucking level of us Mayflower crackers, because we the original crackers that set this shit up. But you like right underneath us, but you above the niggas. So when you see any slave movie, including Django, and you see like the white people out there in the field, that's
Yeah.
just envision that. Those are motherfuckers that just got freedom and now are getting paid a couple of pennies, probably a day, to oversee the niggas doing all the work now instead of them working with the niggas. So those are just some additional wages of this economic wealth gap as well. So all of that builds up to, of course, generational wealth gaps that persist to this day. So if you want to even go to with the shit I just touched on, the white devil that in the 16 1700s that got the upgrade from being full-blown indentured servant to overseer, and at the same time that they got the upgrade, them devils downgraded our people from 7 years servitude to chattel lifetime slavery. Really, like, on some training day shit. Oh, you niggas want to try to, I'm putting charges on all you niggas. That's how they was doing it. Y'all niggas want to rebel? Oh,
Dang.
7 years shit, nigga. Y'all niggas gonna be slaves for life.
Dang.
Like that's the
Intimidation.
reality. That's the reality of this shit.
Yeah.
So the overseer who still only got paid pennies a day after X amount of years, he was able to finally get him a little bullshit cottage, shack, whatever the fuck you want to call it, somewhere, right? So that even that devil who got the shack in 1800, 1700, at least now had a piece of property which would eventually be monetized and have real estate value, which would then have agricultural value. You feel me? Which in turn turns into him maybe building up to where that overseer could now finally afford to buy a couple of slaves of his own now. And now he's part of the newer, level of elite for that era, that newer era. You know what I'm saying? This is all that shit that you gotta really kind of put together a piece and put that puzzle together. But we'll keep that
Mm,
shit moving. But the final pieces of the, the money piece, all of that shit feeds into education. Of course, it feeds into the GI Bill that was passed when soldiers came home from World War II, that allowed these soldiers, mostly white soldiers, 95% of white soldiers received those VA loans that allowed poor whites to buy their first homes. That now translates from houses being bought in 1950, 48, 49, 50 for 6, 7,000 to the time of the 1970s. That house is now 35 to 50,000. To the 1980s is now $100,000 house. To now, these are probably million fucking dollar homes just with that one house. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Meanwhile, niggas was boxed in into the cities, quote unquote, inner cities in apartments, rent, 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 while white people were mortgage, 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 homeowner,
Right.
bread, bread,
Right.
bread. And now
Uh,
instead of
Exactly.
mortgage, 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 now the money they might spend on mortgage, they spending that every paycheck on investing.
what conference class y'all over here running?
Shit, we are in the middle of a video, but we are on the bullet point of economic inequality and the wealth gap.